Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and in this tutorial I'm going to be talking about fetching data in Next.js and how to do it in the new way that Next.js updated on the 15th. And we're going to look over how to fetch data in server component, client component, when we have a data client, and also SWR and React query libraries. So we're going to go over every single one of these options. So making sure you have a complete understanding of how to fetch data. Before I jump in, I need to go over the fact that Next.js 15, which is going to be releasing a stable version soon, have some changes in how they fetch data. So in Next.js 14, every time you fetch a data, it used to cache the data. So you used to have force cache on the cache option. But on the new Next.js 15, they change it to a no store. That means they're not going to be forcing cache on the data. So every time in Next.js 15, no store is being used as default, so no cache is being provided for you. But you can change it to a force cache if you want. So we're gonna go over some of those tools and tips on how to fetch data. So just jump right in. So in here, I have my VS Code open. I'm gonna do is npx create next app at latest. Now, I want to explain why I'm doing the npx create and next app installation is because we are going to be using some external libraries, and Next 15, the RC version, is not compatible with that library. So I'm going to use the latest version of Next.js that is stable right now, which is 14 point something. But we're going to be using the new feature, which is we're going to change the fetch to a no store. So you get the idea of how Next.js 15 is going to fetching the data. Let's start installing this one. Everything will be default. So I'm in my project right now. I'm going to run npm run dev to start my project. And I'm going to show you what we're going to cover in this tutorial. So we're going to have a lot of stuff covering. So first is fetching data in server component. So that's how we are going to be doing. And then number 2 would be fetching data in client components. And then we will have ORMS or database client. I have a database client from one of my projects. So we're going to use MongoDB and Prisma to show you how to fetch data in that. And then next we're going to do is libraries such as SWR and React query. So we're going to do a lot of stuff in this tutorial. Once you're done with this tutorial, you're going to have a very strong understanding of how to fetch data in Next.js. So we're going to cover all the ground. So before I jump in, I have to announce that I have a completely free Next.js 15 guide in my website link down below. Make sure you go ahead and grab that. It have all the information that Next.js 15 have, and everything is up to date. So whenever you need a Next.js guide or handy, if you're coming on an interview, they're gonna have some Next.js question. You just skim through that guide and you have everything already in your hands. So grab that, and yeah, let's jump right into this tutorial. So I'm gonna delete everything in here and completely blank. The first thing we're gonna do is when you're grabbing a data on server component, so this is a server component, is we're gonna create async functions. So async function of, let's call it get data, and in here we're gonna fetch the data. So const response is equal to await fetch, and the website we're gonna use to fetch the data is a dummy website called dummy.json. And if you come to this website, you're gonna have read doc over here, products over here, get all the products. So the output look like this. It gives you a product array of all the product. So I'm just gonna grab this URL and use it in over here. And remember, in Next.js, there's like a few options for cache. So in Next.js, right now we are on 14. So in 14, what happening is the cache is being default as force cache. But in 15, they changed that to a no store. So we're gonna do that in here, right? So we're gonna be doing the Next.js 15 version of caching, which is a no store. And I could have been using Next.js 15 RC version to show you guys this tutorial, but the thing is, I'm gonna be showing you a lot of different things over here that need different libraries, and these libraries are not compatible with 15 yet. So it's gonna throw a lot of errors, so that's why I'm opting into this, but changing the cache to a no store, which is in the 15. So we have exactly the 15 version of caching in our Next.js application right now. So we're kind of mimicking the latest feature, and we are doing the fetching over here. So anytime you fetch a data on server component, you do this, and then I'll do some error handling. So if response is not okay, I'll say throw a new error called failed to fetch data. If not, we're just gonna return response.json over here. That's perfect. So we are fetching some data with a no cache, with a cache of no store, and then returning the data as JSON. And in our component over here, we're gonna do is const data is equal to await get data. Now we also need to change that into an async function as well, because we are doing promise handling over here. Let's console log this data and see what it looks like, so we have an understanding. So we are console logging the data. Look like we have data over here on a console log, as you know, server component is being console log on the server side. Let's go to our browser and see we have this blank page over here. That's good. That means we're getting the data back and our app is working as well. So let's see something. Let's do some data handling to map through our data and showcase in the UI. So we're gonna have a data dot products dot map. Remember, our data is coming through as a product as seen on the dummy JSON as well. So the product. So data dot product would be our mapping use case. And then we're gonna do is product is equal to a div over here, and the paragraph, let's say product dot title, and it's gonna throw us some error because we don't have a key, so I'll do product dot id as the key. The type error is showing over here. We're not gonna do any types, we just keep it as any for the tutorial. So I'm also gonna handle the data over here. So data dot length, data dot products dot length is more than 0, then we're gonna map to the data, otherwise no mapping is gonna happen. Let's go back, refresh, and we have our data all in here. That's perfect. So in server component, we looked at number 1 over here so far. So in the server component, this is how you fetch the data. You create a function, async await, fetch the data. This is the new next cache option. If you're using Next 15, you don't have to do any of this caching. It will be automatically be done for you. But since we're using the old version, we want to opt into the 15 feature, some error handling, and then return the JSON, and then you get the data over here. That's perfect. Now let's opt into number 2. So I'm going to do a check mark over here. So we have like a check mark. Now we're going to do number 2, which is in the client component. So I'm going to delete just this part over here. We're gonna keep this await functionality because we're gonna need that. So what we're gonna do is on the client component, first thing first, we need to change that into a client component, right? So use client for sure. So we have a client component over here. Next we're gonna do is we are gonna copy this. We're gonna bring in some stuff from React. So import use effect and use state from React. And then we are gonna turn this off for now. So I'm gonna bring in some use state snippet over here. So use state snippet one's gonna be is loading is true. The other one's gonna be the product of the products. an empty array right there. That's great. So I'm gonna turn that into regular function, and we have it. We are basically doing the number 2 of client fetching data in client component. So we're bringing this use state and use effect from React. We made some use state snippet is loading, which is true. Product is on empty array. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a function over here called get data, very similar function we created before. This time we're going to do is const data is equal to fetch, and then we're going to do is same thing over here where we copied in the same dummy JSON URL. So let's go back, copy this URL again, and go over here, paste that in. The cache system as well. Cache is no store the Next.js 15 cache. This is 15 cache features. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna handle our promise. So then response is equal to our response.json, and then data is equal to a couple of different things. So we're gonna do set products is equal to data.products, and then we're gonna do set is loading to false. So loading will be turned off to false. So we're doing some loading handling as well. And then we're gonna do is, remember in client component we have to use effect. So we're gonna do that in here. Get data, and it's gonna happen the first time of the loading situation over here. That is perfect. And then what we're gonna do is similar things. Instead of data, we're just gonna do products. So I'm gonna take this off, and there we have it. Let's go to our browser, see if any changes is happening. We're getting an error. We inspect, go to console log, refresh the page. Let's console log the data on here as well. So console log data is equal to products. I'll do it here. And let's see, we're getting some data back. Perfect on our client UI browser console log. That is perfect. We are actually doing however we want in a client component, and is fetching data perfectly. So now let's recap what is happening actually over here and how we can minimize this as well. So in client component, we had made it into a client component by use client. We were bringing in use effect and use states from React. We are creating a use loading state and product use state data. And then we are creating a function called get data, a similar function that we created on the server component. But this time it's not async await. We're like handling the promise over here using .den. So rest is equal to JSON, returning it to JSON. And then we are bringing in the data, which we are injecting it into our state of product using use state. And then we're changing the loading to false. Now we can also do some handling over here. So if loading is happening, then we're gonna do is return key of loading --. And if this loading, by the way, is loading, and then if no product is being shown, we're also gonna be returning p of loading or no data maybe. So we are handling this too over here. So let's go back. Every time we refresh, it's loading over here. You see that, and then we're getting the data back. So that is happening. It's been true. It's been turning into false whenever we get the data back, and we're handling that in use effect. We're calling that function in the use effect. Now you don't need to create this function. You can also grab this fetch and just dump it into here, and everything will be happening in a similar sense. So let's see over here, like that, and it's gonna be the same thing as well. So we're just kind of like arranging it a little neatly over here, and then we are checking if the product have more length than 0. We are mapping to the product, which is over here. So that's how you do it, how you fetch data in client component. Next, I'm gonna do is I'm gonna install Prisma, and I have a database in MongoDB, so we're gonna use that database to show you how to fetch data in with the database client, which is number 3 over here. So I'll put a check mark over here. We're done with that. Let's do number 3. So I'll open a new terminal, and I'm gonna do is npm Prisma. So let's go and check how we actually install the Prisma right here. Just double checking it over, and from scratch, u2 is npm Prisma, then init. So we can do that over here. So npm install Prisma --save --dev. Once we have it installed, we're gonna generate npx Prisma init over here. So we have a Prisma file generated that has been created by Prisma. That is great. Now what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna create the model so we can like inject data on our to-do. So it's called to-do. So this is optional, by the way, but if you follow along, so we can get our database set up so we can do some database client fetching of our data. So what we're gonna do is we are gonna create a Prisma model as over here, ID is equal to string at ID default UUID, and then add map would be underscore ID. Title would be string, optional, is completed would be Boolean, default would be false, and then created at would be a datetime data. There we have it. So we created our database right over here. Now, if you want to learn more about how to do this, I actually have a course on Next.js where we build a lot of different projects and get used to all the features of Next.js, and also doing a lot of database client fetching. Make sure you check that out. That's also linked down below. So there you have the data created. That's perfect. Now on the env, I'm going to create something. Oh, right here, we need to change that to MongoDB so we know we're using MongoDB client. In the env, in my MongoDB database, I actually have what do you call string over here. So this is my old database that I created in MongoDB, and they give me a string over here. So I'm gonna copy that so we can like connect to this DB to-do database that I created, and I'm gonna paste that in here. And in Prisma, you need to put that to-do right over here and change that, delete that part over here. So you know Prisma is. So my password is set, my URL is set. Now, right before I jump in, I want to show you one more thing. Like in MongoDB settings, this is how they want the database URL to be looking like. So .NET / the name of the database. So whatever database name you have named, I named it to do. You just put it in here, so it's like the string is connected. Now we have everything in place. Now what we do is we're gonna make sure we are generating connection to our database. So I'm gonna do is Prisma generate. So I'll npx Prisma generate. So it gives us how to connect the client. So in the source folder, I'm gonna create a folder called db, and in there I'll call index.ps, and I'll copy the first link that they generated, and I will do export const. So now we have basically our database client set up. We can use this client to grab data, to post some data, get requests, post requests, update all those HTTP methods. So I'm going to come over to the page and show you how to actually fetch data in a database client. So in here, I'll change that to a server component one more time. I'll delete everything so we don't have to handle any of these. So make that like this. And so I'm going to create a function similar to what we did on the server component side of thing, our first thing. And data is equal to const data. And then we're going to bring in our Prisma client, so our database client over here. So import Prisma from our DB. So from task/db. So we're bringing in our Prisma client from there. So we imported that right over here. So I'm going to create the function again, async function, of course. Async function is equal to get data. And then I'll call it const data is equal to await Prisma.todo, which is the name of our database. Also the same thing as the model we just created on our Prisma client. And then I'm going to do is find many. And in here, we're going to select basically everything. We don't need to specify what we need to select. And then we're going to return the data over here. And here, I'm going to call the data is equal to await get data. And I'll console log just in case and make sure we have async on that into async console log data over here. I'll turn off the app one more time and reset it. One more thing I'm going to add is I'm just going to bring in the title. So I'm going to see all the data I have in my database. I'm just going to select the title to true. So I'm not going to get anything else. So just the title. So we have like a very basic tutorial. We'll run the server one more time. So all the errors are gone. We started fresh. Let's go back to our server, reset, refresh the page. It's compiling. There we have it. We have our database in our server. Perfect. Let's kind of map through this. So we have an idea. I'm gonna say data, right? Data length. Go back to our, so we have our to-do data mapped through. This is to justify between causing some issues. So we have our to-do data mapped through. Now, just to recap, we created the database client. So in database client, I use Prisma and MongoDB. So Prisma, they have like an env, which is Prisma database URL. And the schema, I created a MongoDB database data source. And also the to-do model that I have my database in. This is what it's looking like. So if I go to the MongoDB browse collection, these are all my data in the MongoDB. So it's getting the to-do database in my Prisma. And then the client is basically we create a DB, we create a client. And in my page, I'm bringing in the client and just getting into the client and telling them, hey, grab all the data in my MongoDB database in the Prisma client and select all the title. And it's returning it. And we're just grabbing the data from there and just putting in here in a server component. In the client component, you can do this same thing as well. Make sure you follow what we discussed on the client component here. So we're done with this part. Let's jump into SWR and React Query. So in SWR, we have to install some libraries. So this is the libraries we're going to be installing, data fetching libraries. Next.js recommend you do SWR, but I'm also going to show you React Query as well. So this tutorial covers the full ground of everything. So SWR, you go in, SWR here. So we're going to install, get started. So npm, copy that, go back to my project. I will install npm I SWR. And you can see on the doc, you just import that in our use SWR. And then you do this basically. And then you have to grab the fetcher. So fetcher is basically go through all the promise handling. So we have the fetcher in there. I'll delete all of this. We don't need any of this. So the fetcher stays right there. I'm getting some TypeScript error, but don't worry about that. And then you have to copy this and then just put it in the home right here. The SWR API is going to be the dummy JSON API that we were using before. So I'm going to go ahead, copy this, paste that in here. And then we have it. Now, how to handle it in our, it's basically the same thing that we created. So you just handle it using similar things that we did in our previous client and client component handling. So you do that. Now, the good part about this is you do in the client component, we had to create a use state for is loading. But if you use the SWR already give you that handling for you. So you don't have to create a use state for is loading, error, or all the data. So it's already been done for you. So all you have to do is do that, and we should have everything in place. Go back. Now we're using client use server, so we may need to turn it into a client component as well. Get rid of the async over here. Look like we're getting the data back, but we need to console log how the data is looking like. So let's do that. Object.product. So let's do that over here. Our data will be dot product. There we have it. We're getting our data back. Perfect. So we are actually working as expected. That is the loading state also working here as well. You refresh, you see that. So let's jump into and recap how did we fetch the data and how we simplify a lot of stuff. So in the client component, we use state of loading of products to kind of like inject the data into our product state, and then we plot that out here. But if you're using SWR, it's so easy. Like they give you the use SWR hook. Now every time you use a hook, you make that into a client component. They give you a fetcher boilerplate function, which kind of like handle fetcher boilerplate function, which handles our data, and you just put that in here as an option. And then you're going to do, you can do a routing URL. If you have like a routing folder or API folder over here, you can do that as well. But we're fetching from dummy JSON URL data, and the is loading error and data are all being given to you by SWR, so you don't need to do any kind of handling by yourself. It's all been done for you. You just show user what you're gonna do if the error occur, is loading occur, and you just wrap it around onto this data product to get out all data displayed out. So that's about SWR. And then we're gonna move into the React query now. So let's jump into the React query and show you how it's how you do that. So quick start installation. I'll do npm React query installation on my project. Now you need to create a query client. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a util file in my folder up here in the source utils, and then I'll create React query client.ts. Next, and then I'm gonna bring in the client from the React query. And in here, we're gonna do is RFCE React query client. And in here, we're gonna do is query client. We'll wrap it into a query client over here. So a quick start over here. So use query client. We're gonna do that, and query client provider. So we're gonna bring in the query client. We're gonna create a client called this right here, and then we're gonna bring in a provider right here. So that should be the right URL. Bring it from, and then the query client provider, we're bringing that here as well, and we're gonna be wrapping that around in here. And then we do client is equal to query client. So there we have it. And then we're going to wrap this into children. And here we're going to bring in children from here. I'll do any React node as our children. And then we have that in here. We're going to bring it into our layout. So in here, we're going to bring the query client like that. So the body I'll do is query client React query client, and then put that in our body. Type error, so I'm gonna fix that right now. So I'm gonna do is so there we have it. We have the query client wrapped in our whole application. So we should be good to go React query in our project. So how we're gonna do that is we are gonna go back to our project. We're gonna delete a lot of the stuff we don't need. So SWR, I'll turn that off. The fetcher we're gonna do, and we're gonna do number 4, of course. So we have done the SWR before, so I'm gonna put the tick mark on SWR. We're doing the React query right now. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna import use query from 10 stack React query. Now this is a hook, so we're gonna use client. And in my folder over here, we're gonna do is const data is loading is equal to use query, and then query key would be products, and the query function would be our fetch function, which we're gonna do over here. It's a fetch. We're gonna do our dummy URL one more time. So go back to JSON, copy that, paste that in here. Remember, and then we're gonna handle .then response is equal to response.json. There we have it. So we are gonna do is console log our data, see if everything is handling properly. Data React query data is equal to data. Let's go back to our project URL. We're getting some error. I'm gonna reset my project. So before we do one more thing, we have to check for one thing, is that when we did the React query client, we need to make that into a client component. So that's how it should be working. So the React query client is a client component client provider. We bought that out in the layout over here on the body. You can also put that before the HTML as well. But right now we're gonna do that. And here we're just using the reuse query to fetch out data using the dummy URL and getting the JSON back. So let's jump into our server client and see how the console log is looking like. So we have the products on our data. Perfect. Let's try to use that on our folder over here. See how it's looking like. We're getting the data back, and let's do some handling as well, some error handling. What we can do is if is loading and or no data, we can actually return div to loading. There we go. So every time we refresh, you see the loading state and give it the data back. And these are all been done using the use React query. So React query using the hook. So one more time, we create a client where we have the React query client, and then we bought that out in the layout where we wrapped it out in our whole application. And then on the page, we're bringing the use query where we are using the query key, query function, fetching the URL, and then which also gives us the is loading similar to SWR, and we were using that to kind of like do some error handling. You can also go above and beyond and see a lot of different features that we can do with the fetching. So far, that's how fetching data work in all of this option. So we explore server component, client component, database client, which was Prisma MongoDB. We did the SWR and React query as well. So this should cover all the ground. I hope you save this tutorial. Every time you forget about certain things, you can come back and watch this video to refresh your memory. You can also get my free Next.js guide, which have a lot of this information in there to keep you handy. Every time you need a refresher, you can just go to that guide and get all of that in your hand. It's totally free. Go to the link down below, and also check out my Next.js course, which go over a lot of this stuff. And we build a lot of different projects, which is like a project-based learning. So every time you learn something, you build something new to give you a better learning experience. So if you like this, make sure you like the video, comment how it helped you, comment what do you like about this and what do you want to see in the future. And also make sure you subscribe. I'm going to bring in more tutorial and amazing videos like this. Check that out as well.